On average, most men around the world are estimated to live around 70 to 80 years old. Women, on the other hand, often live just a little bit longer than men, usually having life expectancies of around 75 to 85. However, as the years pass by, our life expectancies are increasing gradually due to new medications being developed and finding better understandings of our human body and how we can take care of it more effectively. There seems to be a trend in which our average life expectancy is ever increasing. However, simply increasing our life expectancy isn't what some scientists have in mind. Some people are doing the best they can to uncover the secret to eternal life, essentially helping us to become young once again and remain that way for the rest of eternity. Most people these days assume that the secret to immortal life is to download our consciousness to a computer, then allow our minds to either be placed inside of another human body later on, or simply mingle with one another in the digital world, though this idea isn't particularly appealing to most people. Today, we'll be taking a look at 10 mysterious ways that people claim will help us cheat death. And stick around because number 2 is completely insane. But before we get started, be sure to hit that like button and ring the notification bell for more videos. The Peaches of Immortality. Most of us already know that the true secret to having a long and healthy life is a balanced lifestyle. This means that we need to eat our fruits and vegetables daily, as well as engage in moderate exercise almost every day. Maybe this is a 15-minute walk in the evening, or spending time playing with your kids or dogs, whatever works best for you. According to ancient Chinese mythology, however, the secret to a long-lasting life isn't just about eating fruits or vegetables. Rather, it's about eating a particular type of peach that is said to grant its owner immortality. As far as we can tell, this peach never really existed. Instead, it's nothing more than folklore or legend that has brought this peach into the spotlight. The legend tells the story of a monkey king who was chosen by the gods to guard the sacred peach patch that contained these peaches. The peaches were reserved for the gods and goddesses of ancient times, and no human was allowed to consume them. This included the legendary Monkey King. However, one day, the Monkey King grew so curious about the mystical peaches that he decided to take a bite. Thus, he was given eternal life. Consuming the peach had dramatic consequences for him. After the gods found out what had happened, the king was punished in a brutal way, being sealed away into a trap for a period of 500 years. His offense even led to a massive war that broke out in the realm of the afterlife. Thankfully, this story is nothing more than a work of fiction. It was eventually retold and incorporated into a novel that was released in the 16th century, known as The Journey to the West. However, in a shocking twist, this story is said to have also been incorporated into one of the greatest and most popular anime series of all time. Do you have any idea which anime this is? Stick around until the end and we will tell you. Mermaid meat. If you followed Japanese mythology, you may have heard of a bizarre story about mermaid meat. When you think about the mermaids from this story, don't think about the cute mermaids that are so apparent in our culture, such as Disney's Ariel. Instead, the mermaids from this story are much different from the ones that we know and love today. In fact, legend says that they actually existed at one point many years ago. However, this has never been completely proven. The Japanese story tells of a fisherman who went out on his boat one day to find fish to help feed his family. While he was out on the ocean, he came across a strange fish he'd never seen before. As he drew closer, he realized that it wasn't a fish at all. With his line still in the water, he managed to catch the fish and bring it into the boat, only to realize that it was a mermaid. This mermaid was much smaller than the ones we would expect to find today. This one had the tail of a fish, something similar to a carp, but had the upper torso and head of a small monkey-like creature. The man didn't think too much of it and decided to take the creature back home to his family to cook for dinner. When he got back, he fed part of the meat to his young daughter. However, while he hoped this meal would be nourishing for her, he could not have anticipated the effects it would have on her body. As it turned out, eating this creature granted his daughter eternal life. However, it was more of a curse than anything. She was forced to watch all of her friends, family, loved ones, and various spouses pass away time and time again over the course of 800 years. Finally, the gods had mercy on the girl and allowed her to leave the world of the living and pass over into the afterlife. Golden apples. If you were to ask a Viking how to cheat death and live forever, they'd probably tell you the story of a legendary golden apple that has the ability to grant eternal life. According to Nordic mythology, there's a type of holy fruit that has existed for centuries. It's one of the most important and divine objects to have ever existed. This fruit is said to be regularly eaten by gods and goddesses who are dependent on its sweetness to keep them alive forever. Not only does the fruit help you live forever, but it also allows you to be eternally young. Idun, the goddess of spring, was chosen to watch over the apples and ensure that no one else was allowed into the orchard or allowed to take one of the apples. However, another god named Loki managed to outsmart Idun and steal the apples. This threatened the lives of all the gods and goddesses, but thankfully they managed to convince Loki to bring the fruits back to them. The Holy Grail. Before Jesus of Nazareth was crucified, he had his final meal with his disciples. According to legend, Jesus would have drunk from a special goblet during that meal. This goblet would go down in history as the famous Holy Grail. However, other depictions of this story claim that this wasn't the Holy Grail at all. Instead, other theories claim that as Jesus hung on the cross, the blood from his body was captured in a goblet. People who believe this story insist that this is, in fact, the Holy Grail. However, as of today, we have no evidence that such a goblet ever existed. In fact, Jesus made it a point throughout his life to remain as humble as possible, even washing the feet of some of his disciples. With this in mind, it can be somewhat difficult to believe that Jesus would have requested a unique goblet be created for his final meal. In reality, during the Last Supper, it's more likely that he would have simply drunk out of an ordinary cup, which has since been lost to time. In regards to a special goblet being used to capture his blood as he hung on the cross, we have no evidence that such a goblet ever existed. If it did, it seems like this goblet would have most likely been written about in history books at some point throughout history, though the story of such a cup has never been passed down and simply remains a part of mythology and legend. Ambrosia. In the realm of the Greek gods, a drink known as ambrosia was one of the most precious drinks in the world. According to ancient legend, this drink would not only taste better than any drink in the world, but it would also grant whoever drank it eternal life. The drink was reserved exclusively for the gods, goddesses, demigods, and a few select humans. However, over the years, the drink still ended up in the hands of a few thieves. One of these thieves was Tantalus. After stealing the drink, he was punished with one of the worst punishments one could imagine. He was condemned to stand in a pool of water up to his chin. However, he could never quench his thirst, as the water would recede whenever he opened his mouth. He could also never eat the fruits that grew above his head, as the wind would blow them away if he reached for them. Fountain of Youth. Legends tell us that anyone who bathes in the Fountain of Youth will be granted eternal life and, more obviously, eternal youth. However, as far as we can tell, no such fountain has ever existed. Because of this, the story of the Fountain of Youth has been classified as nothing more than a legend or a story from mythology. Though many years ago, it was common knowledge that such a fountain did most likely exist. For example, the European explorers and Spanish conquerors were so convinced that the fountain was real that they believed it likely existed in the New World and set out in search of it. When the explorers arrived in America, stories say they allegedly searched every square inch of the continent and examined every pond and body of water that they found. However, they were unable to take home any evidence of the so-called Fountain of Youth. The Elixir of Life. There have been stories shared for thousands of years that tell of an elixir that can supposedly grant whoever drinks it eternal life. This story is shared among many different cultures and religions all around the world. According to legend, a Chinese emperor once learned of this elixir and sent 1,000 of his troops out to find it. However, the troops never returned, and no one knows what happened to them all these years later. In the world of alchemy, this story is also shared and claims that a count managed to create the drink hundreds of years ago. It's said that he managed to successfully drink the beverage and lived for hundreds of years. However, after he'd traveled around the world and seen everything he wanted to see, he grew tired of life and decided to end it, thus creating yet another tragic end to a story of immortality. The Philosopher's Stone. Harry Potter isn't the only one who went out in search of the Philosopher's Stone. In fact, this stone has its roots in real-world history. Sort of. It's been rumored that the Philosopher's Stone has the ability to turn ordinary objects and rocks into gold. This would essentially grant its owner infinite wealth so that they could do anything they want. In addition to this, the stone also grants its owner eternal life. It's been said that the stone could be created out of an ordinary rock using advanced techniques of alchemy. In fact, there are rumors that a man in the 14th century was able to successfully create such a rock. However, he passed away in the year 1413, so it's unlikely his claims were true. In the end, we don't know if such a rock ever existed or if there's any legitimate way to turn other objects into gold, though it is very unlikely. Sumerian Plant of Eternal Life. The ancient Sumerians also tell the story of a plant that will grant eternal life. This story is detailed in the Epic of Gilgamesh. According to the story, a plant of unknown origin produces fruit that will allow anyone who eats it to live forever. The hero who's written about in the Epic of Gilgamesh finds himself in deep despair after his friend passes away. This event causes him to not only miss his friend dearly, but also fear his own death. Thus, he sets out in search of this plant that will help him live forever. He finally meets a man named Utnapishtim who tells him where he can find the plant. In fact, he later comes across it and picks one of its fruits. However, before he can eat of the tree, a snake steals the fruit from him. Stories like this that stem from the Sumerians are often shockingly similar to the stories that are shared in the Christian world that most people believe to be true and accurate. With that in mind, it begs the question, could the snake mentioned in the story of Gilgamesh be the same snake that tempted Eve with a magical fruit all those years ago? Thanks for watching. Do you have any other theories about eternal life? Be sure to share them in the comments below. Also, do you remember how we were talking about the story of the Monkey King and how it led to the creation of one of the most popular anime series of all time? That anime was Dragon Ball. Anyway, that's all for today. Be sure to hit that like button and ring the notification bell for more videos.